All right. So let's talk about some baseball. And I really enjoyed your latest column about Andrew Benintendi. And I know that when it comes to the news cycle for the Chicago White Sox, it's a lot of Andrew Benintendi, but it is December. There's not much going on with the White Sox right now. We'll get to the trade rumors in a moment. But what was really insightful, what I took away from your Andrew Benintendi piece, Jim, was that even though he hit 5 home runs last year, and in the previous season, he hit 17, maybe a slight adjustment in his offensive approach, and White Sox fans could see more home runs or at least more extra bases from Benintendi in this 5-year contract that he signed with the White Sox.
Yeah, it's I think they would call them barely homers, or I forget what the StatCast term is, the just cleared, or the opposite of no doubt home runs. Seems like Benintendi's power is on the fringe of that. And in a park like Kauffman Stadium, where the alleys get deep in a hurry, like it's 330 to the corners, but then they kind of pitch out and get deep by the traditional power alleys, 387 and 410 in center field. Like a lot of balls that were hit well, triple digits exit velocity, were caught in the warning track or were wall balls. And in guaranteed rate field, those go over the fence. Those sneak over into the first couple of rows. Those go into the craft cave. Those go into the White Sox bullpen. It does seem like, his opposite field power, StatCast might be overstating how many of those balls get over the wall, because looking at similar launch angles and exit velocities, which is what I did to see like where these balls end up, a lot of the opposite field power hit by lefties, like the kind of power that Benintendi has, like 97 to 99 miles per hour exit velocity, tends to end up on the warning track as well, at least of the new baseball or the most recent baseball. We'll see what the actual baseball for 2023 is and how that plays. But if it's more of the same, then I wouldn't count on Benintendi getting a whole lot of homers to left field. But he should be rewarded definitely to the pole field. And this will be his first time playing in a park where it actually rewards a left-handed hitter, to pull the ball, because in Fenway, there's not a whole lot there unless he can sneak it inside the pesky pole. And in Kauffman Stadium, there's no real benefit to pulling the ball in either direction unless you have power to do so. So if you have the fringe power like Benintendi does, like he's better off going all fields, hitting for average, and then like getting the homers where he may. This is like the first time where he's actually has an opportunity to eat. And I guess we'll see like whether he can. Sometimes when it comes like pulling the ball in the air, that's a skill that not everybody has. Like I'm thinking like, with the White Sox, probably the guy I think who best embodies that to me in recent White Sox history was Jordan Danks. Like pretty swing, decent hit tool, could play some defense. If only he could pull the ball in the air, but he really couldn't. Like aside from some mistakes that, the Reddick done moo, that was a hanger that he socked out. But otherwise, like velocity couldn't turn it around. And so like he had to settle for like the opposite field flares and just the medium contact that died in left fielder's gloves. And so he just didn't have that extra pop to stick in the major leagues in any kind of meaningful role. So I think that's, Benintendi has proven that he's a major league outfielder. So he's not that, but in terms of like hitting the ball in the air as a skill, like repeatedly against velocity, I think is something he has to show, and he hasn't yet. So I have an open mind, but I'm also not counting on him doing that just because he has to show he can do it, and not everybody can.
Yeah, one of the graphics that you put up in the piece that I think is really relevant and really eye-opening is just comparing the amount of home runs that Benintendi hit in the past years and what that could have translated if he was with the Chicago White Sox. Like in 2021, he had 17 home runs. That's pretty good. That would have been 29 with the White Sox.
Well,
okay, that's
if every game is played at guaranteed rate field.
Yes.
So not with the White Sox and their normal 162 game schedule, but in a world where all the games are played in guaranteed rate field.
But Benintendi in 2021, though, if you go to the column on SoxMachine.com, or if you're watching this on YouTube with the graphic up, he would have seen increases across the American League. So if he was with the White Sox, I think it's safe to assume that he would have hit more than 17 home runs in 2021. Maybe he exceeds 20 home runs for the first time since 2017. And I think he would have hit more than 5 in 2022. I'm pretty confident in that. So I'm putting down Andrew Benintendi after reading your column, Jim. I'm super convinced and that he's going to hit more than 16 home runs with the White Sox. thanks to your column, and I'll hold you to that. If he doesn't hit 16 home runs, I'm kidding. But you mentioned as far as like the spray charts and the ability to hit the ball in air. And while you released this column on SoxMachine.com, James Fegan of The Athletic also wrote about Andrew Benintendi. And Andrew Benintendi's in kind of your neck of the woods around Nashville.
Yep.
Is that in Nashville?
It's Antioch, so it's basically borders Nashville. So basically like Cicero or trying to think what it would be, Evanston or something like that. Just right across the border from Nashville itself.
Got it. So it's not Nashville. If you were treating Nashville like Chicago, it's really not Nashville.
Yeah, if you care to do so.
One quote that caught my attention as Andrew Benintendi is working with Michael Coleman, former major leaguer, who runs the M3 baseball training facility down in Tennessee. And he works with Mookie Betts. So quite the client to work with. And what Coleman said was, quote, "You're trying to get the ball in the air. You hit the ball on the ground, you're out. Infielders are just so good right now that grounders are easy outs." And I agree with Michael Coleman. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I am very much #ball in air. And I think that is a focus that the White Sox need to continue to have, especially hitting at home at Guaranteed Rate Field, where it's very hitter friendly, in which, especially in the home run end, and the way that we have seen home run fly ball rates from the White Sox in previous years. Infield flies don't help. And I know that a lot of White Sox fans got frustrated with the amount of fly balls that died at the warning track, but I still think it's a worthwhile strategy for all White Sox hitters to continue putting the ball in air. And looking at Andrew Benintendi's batted ball data on Baseball Savant, he's not that different from like league average with ground ball rate. Like it's not alarming, Jim. In 2022 is 43.8%, and league average is right around 45%. So he's slightly below league average. In 2021, he was at 39.5%. I think that's more ideal based on the elite hitters right now, especially the power hitters. They are in the 30s when it comes to ground ball rate because they're hitting more fly balls and they're hitting more line drives, which I think every hitter, professional hitter, would tell you. I would love the line drive percentage to be the highest percentage because then you're getting really ideal launch angles and exit velocities. And you're helping out as far as the amount of barrels that you're hitting or hard hit contact, which again is more than 95 mile per hour exit velocity. But as you alluded to just recently, is that it's not easy to pull the ball in the air. And in 2022, Benintendi saw a 7% drop in the percentage of balls pulled, in which he had a 36% in 2021, and that dropped to 29%. And where those balls ended up going was more straight up the middle. 41% of the batted balls for Andrew Benintendi went into center field, and he hit more opposite field balls, 30% to opposite field than to the pull side. What does this all mean? I think when we start watching Andrew Benintendi early and the conversations we have when we get the first glimpses of Andrew Benintendi down in Glendale, Arizona, work it out in spring training, is the percentage of the amount of balls that he's pulling, especially pulling in the air. Because as you alluded to with your research, Jim, and the James Fegan speaking to Michael Coleman, who's working with Andrew Benintendi this offseason, like that's the goal. The goal is for Andrew Benintendi to hit the ball in the air to the pull side. And as we know at Guaranteed Rate Field, if he can accomplish that, we should see more home runs.
Yeah, getting that jet stream. That's so beneficial. Like the Bill James handbook said that it was the friendliest park for left-handed power, and the White Sox just have precious little left-handed power. And, you know, that was one of the challenging things about writing that post and trying to find similarly hit batted balls by lefties, because you can't really look at right-handed hitters going to right field in the same way as left-handed hitters going to right field, because just the point of contact is different. The spin off the bat is different. So it's just not quite the same. So I'm looking for left-handed contact that had, you know, home run launch angle and home run exit velocity. And there aren't many examples at Guaranteed Rate Field because the White Sox are, you know, they always represent half the team playing in the games there. And it's always a struggle, but I was at least able to find some to give myself an idea of like what to expect. And it feels like, you know, with Andrew Benintendi, that given that he's not yet official, and given what happened with Carlos Correa, it almost feels like we should just say, like, if he signs, if he passes the physical, if he, just like, I'm a lot more wary about conditional statements ever since Carlos Correa happened.